In just 2 years, these 9 cars, including models from Alfa Romeo and Jaguar, could be worth less than your old smartphone. We're talking resale value plunging by as much as 80%, dealers desperate to move them, and buyers running for the exits. If you own one, the clock is already ticking. Think your car is an investment? Think again. When these brands tank, it's not just a few bucks. We're talking thousands evaporating overnight. That $50,000 badge you proudly drove off the lot could be worth less than a used hatchback in 2 years. And the worst part? It's not just about money. It's the gut punch of watching a name you trusted, Jaguar, Alfa Romeo, Fiat, fade into showroom ghosts. Every mile you drive is another drop in value, and every headline screams, you bought into a brand already on life support. At number 9 is Infiniti. It was supposed to be Japan's answer to BMW and Mercedes, a luxury badge born in the late 80s to take on the Germans, backed by Nissan's engineering and deep pockets. But here's the reality. In 2024, Infiniti sold under 60,000 vehicles in the US, and in the first half of 2025, it only sold around 25,000 vehicles. That's not just low, that's dangerously low for a luxury brand in North America. While competitors like Lexus and BMW posted growth, Infiniti went backwards. And that's rare in this market, because luxury car buyers have been spending more than ever. They're not just spending it on Infiniti. The gap is widening every year. And if you walk into what used to be a standalone Infiniti showroom, you might notice something odd. It's now sharing floor space with Nissan. That's right, the brand is being merged into Nissan dealerships in many regions. Fewer standalone dealers, fewer dedicated service space, and less of that luxury feel that keeps customers loyal. The dealerships hate it because they've lost exclusivity, and buyers, they notice. Part of the problem is the product itself. Take the QX50. Once hyped as a luxury crossover with cutting-edge engineering, on paper it had the tech, a variable compression turbo engine that promised power and fuel economy in one. But in reality, it became a headache, reliability issues, repair costs, and a driving experience that never lived up to the premium price tag drove buyers away. In luxury, once trust is broken, it's nearly impossible to win it back. The bigger picture? Luxury customers today have more choices. Newcomers are winning hearts with fresh designs and strong warranties. EV brands are stealing the forward-thinking crowd. Infiniti, meanwhile, hasn't told a compelling story in years. No generational prestige, no breakthrough models, and very little in the way of excitement. Industry insiders say it's not just the cars, it's corporate neglect. Infiniti's R&D budgets have been slashed. Marketing has been cut back. The brand feels starved for investment, as if Nissan is letting it quietly fade into irrelevance. And that's the tragedy here. Infiniti isn't dying because of one catastrophic failure. It's dying because nobody in the boardroom seems to care enough to save it. In the cold, unromantic world of car sales, that's the real kiss of death. As Infiniti quietly slides into irrelevance, how does a brand with Honda's power utterly fail at luxury? Next up, Acura, a brand on life support for nearly 4 decades. At number 8 is the Acura. It just killed the TLX, and with it, a piece of the company's fading identity. But let's be honest, the TLX didn't die because of one bad year. It died because Acura, as a brand, has been on life support for decades. After 37 years, Honda still hasn't convinced Americans it can build the luxury car people actually want. BMW is the ultimate driving machine. Mercedes screams prestige. Lexus, reliability and refinement. Acura, nothing. It's a Honda with a pricier badge, and buyers know it. The TLX's number tells the story. Once a competitive mid-sized luxury sedan, recent US sales have collapsed to barely a few thousand units a year, a fraction of past peaks. In the same showrooms, the Honda Accord, cheaper, better known, and arguably better looking, outsold it several times over. Dealers openly complain they're paying rent on empty Acura showrooms while customers line up for Honda models instead. And this isn't a one-model problem. It's the whole brand. Acura's $1 billion NSX Halo car project, a disaster that lost around $100,000 on every unit sold. The 2016 Precision Concept design reboot? 8 years later, the car still looks like angry Hondas no one under 40 wants to drive. Consumer research says it all. 73% of buyers under 35 can't name a single meaningful difference between Acura and Honda. That's fatal in the luxury segment. And now Honda's 2028 plan reportedly calls for the entire Acura brand to disappear, folding the MDX and RDX into the Honda lineup and killing the TLX outright. Acura didn't just lose a sedan, it lost the fight to prove it belonged in the luxury world. The TLX's tombstone might as well read, "Here lies Acura sedan, killed by SUVs, EVs, and 37 years of identity crisis." But if a once proud brand like Acura can vanish without a fight, just imagine what's happening to brands that never had luxury DNA to begin with. At number 7 is Mitsubishi. It hadn't just fallen behind in America, it's practically disappeared. In 2024, the brand sold just over 87,000 vehicles in the entire US market. That's less than Toyota sells in a single month. Even Subaru, the once niche all-wheel drive specialist, moves more than double that in a quarter. Dealer counts are shrinking fast, down to around 320 US franchises, a drop of more than 20% over the past decade. And with fewer dealers comes longer wait times, worse service, and frustrated owners who have to drive hours for warranty work. It's a death spiral every struggling automaker feels. Fewer dealers lead to less customer confidence, which means fewer sales and even fewer dealers. This isn't the Mitsubishi of the 1990s when Eclipses, Monteros, and Lancer Evolutions gave the brand an identity. Today, their US lineup is basically 2 crossovers and one of the cheapest and most mocked new cars you can buy, the Mirage. On paper, the Mirage should be a draw, under $18,000 brand new. But sales are down over 50% in 5 years, and the average Mirage now sits on a lot for over 200 days before anyone buys it, nearly triple the industry average. When your selling point is it's cheap and people still walk away, that's not just bad, that's terminal. Even the Outlander, their so-called flagship SUV, isn't helping. The 2022 redesign, built on a Nissan Rogue platform, gave it better looks and tech, but the momentum evaporated. In 2024, it barely cracked 45,000 US sales, numbers that would get executives fired at Hyundai or Kia. Globally, Mitsubishi is focusing on Southeast Asia, where it still sells workhorse pickups and budget cars. North America is now a side project, with corporations openly admitting US product development is selective. Translation: they won't spend here unless they have to. Industry chatter suggests the brand's North American lineup won't see any major new product launches beyond 2026, without a strategic shift or a surprise partner deal. And with Stellantis, Nissan, and others focused on their own electrification plans, Mitsubishi has no obvious lifeline. Right now, Mitsubishi isn't a comeback story. It's a hospice patient with the occasional twitch. Betting on them surviving in the US past 2030, you have better odds buying a winning Powerball ticket. Mitsubishi may be dying a slow, grinding fade, but now watch how an American luxury name is hemorrhaging cash and prestige even faster. At number 6 is Lincoln. Ford's once proud luxury division that's now limping along borrowed time. Back in the mid-2010s, Lincoln promised a renaissance, big investments, big speeches, and the revival of legendary nameplates like the Continental, a direct shot at Mercedes' S-Class and BMW's S-Series. But the reality? That Continental sold fewer than 20,000 units total in the US before it was axed in 2020. And insiders say Lincoln lost tens of thousands of dollars per car just to build it. That's luxury car economics in reverse, like burning stacks of cash in a silk-lined fire pit. Today, Lincoln is essentially a high-priced badge on Ford hardware. The Navigator is just dressed up Ford Expedition. The Corsair, a Ford Escape in designer clothes. And yet they're moving far fewer of them than rivals. In 2024, Lincoln sold just over 81,000 vehicles in the US compared to Lexus at over 300,000 and BMW north of 360,000. That's not a gap, that's a canyon you can park a Mercedes plant in. Dealers aren't thrilled either. Lincoln showroom requirements are expensive. Sales throughput is low, and Ford corporate is quietly nudging them toward commercial truck sales just to keep the lights on. For some, a Lincoln franchise is now more of a liability than a prize. Their flagship gambles have flopped hard. The Continental was meant to be Lincoln's big Mercedes moment. Instead, it was a ghost town. The MKZ sedan followed it into the graveyard. Luxury buyers dropping $80,000 would rather have a BMW Roundel or a Mercedes 3-point star than a Lincoln badge, no matter how soft the leather or how plush the ride. Globally, Lincoln's situation isn't much better. It's heavily dependent on China for volume, but even there, local EV makers and German imports are stealing market share. Meanwhile, in the US, the luxury market is sprinting toward electrification, and Lincoln is crawling. By the time their promised EV lineup fully arrives, Tesla, Rivian, BMW, Mercedes, and Audi will have already carved up most of that market. The strategic failure is glaring. They're spending BMW-level money without BMW-level brand equity. That can't command the same premium, but they're footing the same R&D bills, a formula that bleeds red ink, because at the end of the day, Lincoln's destiny is to be an expensive badge on a truck, until even that math stops adding up. At number 5 is Genesis, the $8 billion prestige experiment that can't buy prestige. Genesis is the car industry's equivalent of a billionaire's vanity project. It looks beautiful in the brochure, but the economics? A money pit with chrome trim. Since Hyundai spun it off in 2015, Genesis has devoured over $8 billion in development, marketing, and building a dealer network from scratch. And the return? In 2024, Genesis sold fewer than 70,000 vehicles in the US, less than 1/3 of what BMW moves in just the 3 Series alone. Think about that. One German sedan outsells the entire Genesis lineup. BMW's 3 Series alone outsells the entire Genesis lineup. Lexus's RX, a single SUV, sells almost twice as many units. That's the prestige game in a nutshell. Genesis is swinging at the heavyweights, but it's barely landing glancing blows. And the pain isn't just on the sales charts, it's on the showroom floor. Genesis demanded standalone dealerships, gleaming glass and steel monuments to prestige, before the sales volume was there to justify them. For dealers, that meant $2 to $4 million in build-out costs for the brand that, in many US markets, moves maybe 2 or 3 cars a week. Imagine paying that mortgage while your showroom echoes. Now here's the thing. Genesis didn't fail on engineering. Cars like the G90 sedan and GV80 SUV are seriously good. They win design awards. They're quiet, comfortable, and packed with tech. But prestige? Prestige is earned in the trenches over decades, not just bought with Super Bowl ads and celebrity endorsements. And leasing heavy sales have actually undercut the exclusivity they're chasing. If your status car is widely known as a $499 a month lease with $0 down, the magic wears off fast. Luxury buyers are the most brand-loyal customers in the auto world. They don't just buy a car, they buy a membership in a club. And in America, Genesis is still standing outside the velvet rope. In South Korea, it's aspirational. In the US, it's a curiosity. The miscalculation was thinking US buyers would dump their BMWs, Benzes, and Lexuses just because a newcomer offered a better value or a nicer interior. That's not how the prestige market works. Genesis built the glitzy castles before it had the population to fill them. And now they're burning through cash on dealer incentives, redesigns, and marketing just to keep momentum. Genesis burned billions trying to buy prestige. Prestige doesn't come from spending alone. Now brace yourself for a brand that burned through its legacy instead. At number 4 is Chrysler, the brand with 2 models left. Once upon a time, Chrysler was a pillar of the American auto industry. This was the nameplate of elegant sedans like the New Yorker, bold styling, and Detroit swagger turned into sheet metal. You didn't just drive a Chrysler, you made an entrance. Fast forward to today, and walk into a Chrysler dealership. What greets you? A minivan. And if the universe is feeling generous, maybe another minivan. That's Pacifica, and its fleet-only twin, the Voyager. That's it. No sedans, no SUVs, no halo car to dream about. Chrysler's entire existence is balanced on the shrinking niche of family vans. a category shrinking faster than dial-up internet subscriptions. The collapse has been brutal. In 2005, Chrysler moved over 600,000 vehicles in the US. In 2023, they barely cleared 112,000. That's an 80% plus sales implosion in less than 2 decades. And it's not because Americans stopped buying cars, they just stopped buying Chryslers. The 300 sedan was their last stand for sedan credibility, a symbol of affordable luxury that once hit over 140,000 units in a single year. But by 2023, sales had withered to under 15,000 before Chrysler finally pulled the plug. And when it died, there was no successor. No next big thing waiting in the wings. Stellantis, Chrysler's corporate parent, had clearly moved on emotionally years earlier. Now picture being a Chrysler dealer. You got a giant glass showroom built to display 6 gleaming sedans, but you're left wheeling in a lone Pacifica, hoping no one notices the echo. Many dealers have even stopped pretending. They pivot to fleet sales, pack the floor with used cars, or morph into service centers just to pay the light bill. Some even shack up with Jeep or Dodge, because without them, the Chrysler logo out front might as well be a very expensive neon for lease sign. The strategy, if you can call it that, was to keep milking the 300 until it collapsed under its own age. No new generation, no fresh tech, just mild updates until it looks like a relic. Meanwhile, competitors weren't waiting around. Toyota brought the Highlander. Ford rolled out the Explorer. Honda dropped the Pilot. All SUVs that print money. Chrysler, nothing. No SUV, no crossover, just minivans and memories. And Stellantis made their priorities crystal clear. The R&D money went to Jeep, a global SUV powerhouse. Ram, truck market king. Dodge, still milking its muscle car glory. Chrysler, it's on life support, sustained by rental fleets and parents who refuse to buy an SUV. If Chrysler's hanging by a thread, Fiat's already fallen off the loom, and what's left is more rumor than reality. And number 3 is Fiat, the brand that couldn't buy a second chance. Fiat roared back into the US in 2011, with retro swagger, a marketing blitz, and the promise of a stylish European alternative to Toyota and Honda. Less than a decade later, it was a ghost, leaving behind empty showrooms, standard dealers, and one of the steepest collapses in modern automotive history. The master plan hinged on one car, the city-friendly Fiat 500. Cute, yes. Profitable, absolutely not. America doesn't buy tiny hatchbacks in big numbers, and by 2019, 500 sales had imploded to under 1,400 units, a jaw-dropping 95% drop from its debut peak. Jeep was selling more Wranglers in a single week than Fiat moved in an entire year. And it wasn't just the 500 that tanked. The 500 liter was too awkward, the 500X crossover too anonymous, and the sporty 124 Spider far too niche to keep dealers afloat. By 2020, Fiat's total US sales barely cleared 4,300 units, less than what Ford moved before most people finished their morning coffee. Dealers paid the highest price. FCA, now Stellantis, pushed for standalone Fiat studios, forcing heavy investment in dedicated showrooms for a product line that couldn't pay the rent. Many ended up filling their floors with used cars just to cover basic expenses. Then came the knockout blows. Quality scores that sank to the bottom of JD Power rankings, resale values in freefall, and product cycles so slow they felt like decades. Marketing whiplashed from quirky Italian lifestyle to cheap Honda alternative, with neither message sticking. And when Fiat finally launched the 500e EV, it wasn't a savior. It was a compliance car designed to check a regulatory box. By 2021, the gas-powered 500 was dead in North America. The EV version trickled back for 2024, but only in limited markets, serving more as a novelty than a revival. Fiat didn't just fail to win American hearts, it failed to even get America's attention. And in the cutthroat US market, being forgettable is worse than being bad. Fiat failed to even get a foothold in America, but Alfa, it went further. It climbed back, then collapsed into a condition no prestige brand can survive. At number 2 is Alfa Romeo, the gorgeous corpse. When Alfa Romeo stormed back in America in 2017, it promised nothing less than a renaissance. Sculpted Italian sedans, seductive SUVs, and marketing dripping with heritage. It looked like a Ferrari for the driveway and felt like the brand's long overdue redemption. Fast forward to 2023, and the dream's in shambles. US sales collapsed to just 10,000 units. That's barely 830 cars a month nationwide. Break it down further, and many dealers are moving only a handful of Alfas every 30 days. The US market demands 50,000 annual sales to justify a nationwide dealer and service network. Alfa isn't even in the same galaxy. The Giulia sedan was meant to be the crown jewel. Visually, a masterpiece. But once buyers drove them home, the romance soured. Reliability complaints, electrical glitches, and warranty delays stretching into months drove repeat customers straight into the arms of BMW, Lexus, and Mercedes. The Stelvio SUV, stylish but it arrived late, lacked updates, and was drowned out in a market addicted to constant innovation. And then there's the service nightmare. With sales this low, most dealers can't justify a full-time Alfa-certified tech. In rural states, owners sometimes drive hundreds of miles just to find a qualified mechanic. Even basic replacement parts can take weeks to arrive, an eternity when your premium European investment is sitting dead in the driveway. Behind the curtain, Stellantis, Alfa's parent company, is focusing its money where the returns are: Jeep, Ram, and Dodge. Alfa is an afterthought. Industry whispers say the US lineup could be slashed or even pulled entirely within a few years, with resources shifting to Europe and EV markets, where the brand still matters. Here's the brutal truth. Without volume, infrastructure, or corporate backing, Alfa Romeo in America is a boutique fantasy with no business case. The cars still look like rolling sculptures, but if yours breaks down in middle America, you won't just be stranded. You'll be stranded with a brand that's fading out of existence. But if a heritage brand can wither there, wait until you see what happened to a legendary icon that tried to vanish on purpose. At number 1 is Jaguar. The icon fading into irrelevance. Jaguar used to roar. By the mid-2010s, under Tata's ownership, the lineup was turning heads again, and US sales hit around 40,000 units in 2017. But while rivals found ways forward, Jaguar stalled. By 2022, sales had plunged below 10,000. In 2023, just 8,348 units were sold in the US, while sibling brand Land Rover, with SUVs people actually buy, moved 66,039. Into 2024, there were faint flickers of life. About 6,800 Jaguars sold through July, but not enough to impress the people signing the checks. So what happened? Project Roar. Launched in late 2024, this radical rebrand ditched the classic Growler logo, scrapped muscle car imagery, and leaned into abstract lifestyle messaging. Jaguar declared it would be all-electric and ultra-luxury, chasing a new kind of tastemaker. Instead, it sparked backlash, and sales collapsed. In Europe, the fallout was brutal. April 2025 saw just 49 new Jaguars registered, down from 1,961 a year earlier. A jaw-dropping 97.5% drop. Year-to-date sales through April slid 75%. To be fair, this wasn't entirely accidental. Jaguar deliberately pulled most gas and diesel models in late 2024, keeping only the F-Pace, creating an intentional inventory gap before an EV relaunch. But that left dealerships empty and loyal customers alienated. The internal numbers are just as grim. Global sales from fiscal 2024-2025 came in at 26,862 units, down 45.8% year over year, with first quarter sales alone plunging nearly 48%. Add a PR disaster to the mix, a 17% stock drop, and CEO Adrian Mardell's resignation, and you've got a brand in free fall. Jaguar isn't fading because of bad luck. It's fading by design, abandoning legacy models before its EV future was even ready, alienating fans and watching sales implode. Once a symbol of luxury performance, it now feels like a ghost, a badge with nowhere left to go. The emblem doesn't matter. The price tag doesn't lie. Luxury by label is collapsing faster than you can say depreciation. If you're not alert, you might end up with a car that's only good at sitting. So, which of these fading names still earns your cash? Drop your pick in the comments down below, and don't stop here. Click on the next video on your screen and keep going. There's plenty more where this came from.